Welcome back to Bizarre Bazaar, and today we speak to a real hitman who resides in a Panamanian jail.
Bill and Vicky Mabry from Nightline, from New York.
How are you?
I'm okay. Did you kill those 5 people?
Not really at liberty to talk about my case.
He goes by the name of Bill Prophet, formerly Wild Bill, and William Holbert. He is incarcerated for killing an entire family of 5. He even moved into their house after the murders. Eventually, the police found their bodies, buried in the garden of their former home. Bill talks to us about these crimes and other murders he claims to have committed whilst working as a hitman. There's so much more we cover in this case as well. Bill wanted me to mention that he is fortunate enough to have access to a Facebook group called Friends of Brother Bill, so you can communicate for yourself or just find out what he is up to in there. Bill also has a podcast that he creates direct from prison called Stone Jug Entertainment, so give it a search and go check it out. Before we start, if you want to write to inmates like I do, then use the service I use. It's called Jmail. It's fast and it's secure, and it means you don't have to use your home address. That's the main reason why I like it. I get physical letters sent to my house, but I don't give my address to the inmates. I'll leave a link to their services in the description below. Just go check out the website. I suppose I'd like to start at the homicide of the family of 5. Can you tell us about the build-up and what happened, please, Bill?
I'm serving a 46-year sentence for 5 homicides, and
Yeah.
like I want people to understand, it's not like you wake up one day and you say, you know what, I'm going to be a professional killer. That's what I'm going to do. It doesn't work that way. It's like one step after another step after another step down into hell. I started off when I was in the United States. When I was still in the United States, I started off as like a small-time hood, small-time crook, doing stuff like selling untaxed cigarettes and selling like hot heavy machinery, stolen heavy machinery, things like that. And we're making really good money. And for one reason or another that I can't really get into on here, I ended up being a fugitive from the United States. So all criminals are like that. I mean, I think when you're in that mode of being a criminal, you think that you'll never get caught and it's impossible. But I mean, inevitably, you're going to make a mistake. And I made a mistake and had to leave the United States. So I ended up in Costa Rica, and I worked at first. I mean, when you're a fugitive, this is what people don't understand. When you're a fugitive, you can't just go get a job. I mean, you're a fugitive. So anybody does any kind of research on you, the smallest research on you, are going to find out that you're, a crook, a criminal. So I just do a little research, but it's also really easy to get into that underworld, into the underworld where you can find work. And like, especially if you're a guy like me, I did a little money collection, and physical violence didn't bother me very much. And so I ended up captaining. I had a boat license, a ship captain's license from the United States up to 5,000 tons, and I ended up captaining the first job I had outside the United States in the criminal world. I ended up captaining a human trafficking ship, small ship, that went from Bocas del Toro, Panama, to Jamaica and back, dropping off people. And they're dropping off Asian people of Asian descent who had actually paid to be smuggled into the United States. People from China that couldn't get a visa, they pay an enormous amount of money to get smuggled into the United States. And so my leg of it was they come through the Panama Canal and come up to the Bocas del Toro and stop there. Then I would pick them up and carry them, not all the way to Jamaica, but like maybe 2/3 of the way to Jamaica, and the Jamaicans would do a transfer on the open ocean. And so, and then I'd come back, and I was making really good money doing that, actually. And so a fellow who worked with me, an American fellow, we had a verbal fight that elevated into a physical fight. And in that physical fight, I defended myself, and he died. And I killed him. And that was the first person I ever killed. And I was freaked out, man. I mean, I was like really freaked out by it. It wasn't something that I wanted to do at all. It wasn't something, I mean, I didn't even want to be in that fight. I didn't want that guy to be even on the boat with me. I mean, I was really unhappy. He was supposed to be security. I was really unhappy with the way he was performing his job. And even though I'm working in the criminal underworld, I'm very professional, very driven, and this fellow wasn't. And that was what the fight was about. And so So I was left with a body and didn't know what to do with it. And so I waited, and my boss came to pay us, and I was like covered in blood. And he said, "My God, what happened?" I said, "We've got a problem." And he says, "Well, what's the problem?" And I'm like, "Look." So I lifted up a blue tarp that I had put over the fellow, and he says, No. You got a problem. I got a problem. I didn't see shit. I came here and I paid both of you." And he gives me the money for both of us and leaves. So I was left with like a body, you know what I mean? So I'm like, shit, I didn't know what to do with it. So I buried it. What else are you supposed to do with a body, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went and washed it up, and I went and I left the keys there. I left the keys there because I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm freaked out by it. And so one thing or another, they called me like, "No, come back to work. Everything's okay. Nobody." And I was afraid that they were going to kill me because of what happened, and they did not. And that really they were happy with what happened because they kind of had a hook in on me. So I this is like the very first thing that ever happened to me. The Costa Ricans and Panamanians investigated that homicide and ruled that homicide self-defense. I didn't get charged for that homicide. So, but I was afraid at the time that I would get charged. You know, I was afraid, you know, and the guys I was working for kind of holding that over my head a little bit, not in a direct way, but in an indirect fashion. And so, when I was finally ready to continue working with them, they offered me a hit contract. I took it. I was at the time when I didn't care anymore. I mean, I didn't have a conscience, so to speak, anymore. I had already seen and done some things. I'll just be perfectly honest with you. I didn't have a conscience, so I took it. And then one day, the people that I worked with in the human trafficking organization were the Brown family, the first homicide that I was charged with. And so I didn't know this at the time, but Michael Brown had been a DEA and put away a whole bunch of guys in I think the Italian mafia in the United States, the Italian American mafia in the United States. And anyway, a contract came down to kill Michael Brown. I took it. I wanted the money. That was fine. But the way I investigated the thing, and there's no way to do it because there's no way to kill him without killing his family. There's no way. And so the contract came down with a little bit more and said kill them all. And then that's what I did. I'm not defending myself in any way. It's a terrible thing to do. I'm just telling you what happened, what it was. You know what I'm saying?
I guess it wasn't personal to you.
For me, it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal for me. I mean, I guess anytime somebody arrives at your house and whacks you and your whole family, it's probably pretty personal, but it wasn't personal for me. And I justified it back in the day by saying, well, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. And so, I mean, and that's an easy way to try to clean your conscience. And that's another thing I want to talk about. And we'll get there, but your conscience does bother you, or at least mine did. I don't know. I knew other men who were hitters as well, who liked their job. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed torturing, killing people. That shit always really made me, it wasn't very easy for me to do. It's a very difficult thing for me to do. Every time that this is a very vulgar way, but I'm going to say very vulgarly how it was for me. It was like as if I come to you and I carry a plate with a piece of human shit on this plate, and I tell you, if you'll eat this piece of human shit, I'll give you $3 million. You eat the shit, you get the $3 million. That doesn't mean that you like to eat shit. It just means that you are willing to compromise your own personal morals for the money. And that's where I was in that time period. And I was living huge. I mean, by this time, I was nearing millionaire status, living huge. So I killed Mike Brown and his family, and they were going to pay me. And I said, don't pay me anything. I don't want you to pay me. I want the property. Help me to change the property over. And so they did. They engineered through a lawyer that we would change the property over. So that's, and the Panamanian government wanted to play it out as if I had killed people for real estate. And that's the way they advertised the murders. That only ever happened once. And I was only ever in possession of somebody else's goods once. And it was an afterthought. It wasn't a before thought. It was an afterthought. Then I'm also serving time for the murder of Bo Eisler. Bo Eisler was the art dealer and pre-Columbian art trafficker who pissed somebody off. And the order came down the same way to kill Bo Eisler, and so I did. and that was a fairly straightforward ordeal. I didn't have property changed over for him or anything like that. And so that's another thing. When I was taken in by the investigators, I sat down. I said, "Hey, look, I did all this. I'm ready to sign. It's fine. I mean, you guys got me, right? So I did it all. No big deal. Let's move forward. Let's wham bam. Thank you, ma'am. Let's make this quick and easy." They said, No. But we know that there are other people involved. And I said, well, maybe there are, maybe there aren't. But I'm not interested in putting other people in jail. You got me. Be cool with that. Be happy. You got me. So I'm ready to confess that I did these things all by myself, so on and so forth. And they're like, no. We want you to confess. I'm like, I'm not putting other people in jail because I'm not a rat. And where I come from, rat is like the worst thing. It's like being a child molester. It's like something terrible, And so I didn't. Well, the district attorney's office was faced with a huge dilemma in that they had murders and they had a murderer and they didn't have a motive. And they couldn't go to the press and say, well, we figured it all out, because they hadn't figured it all out. And they knew, and they were trying to get me to implicate a friend of mine who's a lawyer who helped me change papers, and they tried to get me to implicate some of my, and they actually had my wife arrested, which they actually which was madness. This is my ex-wife. I'm not married to her anymore, but there was madness that they would arrest my wife for these things. I mean, the only thing that she did was cook my food and suck my dick. I mean, forgive my vulgarity, but we're talking about the reality of the situation. And I wasn't a man then, nor am I a man now to give explanations to anybody for what I'm doing or where I'm. It's not like I was like, hey, baby, I'm going to kill some people. You want to go along? That's ridiculous. And so I stood up in court and said, she had nothing to do with it, and they still put her in jail. There was no evidence. But we're in Panama where when the Americans, and that's another thing, the American government was against me. Obviously I did wrong, right? I mean, it's difficult to have sympathy for a guy like me. But I took it. I said, okay, I never tried to sidestep it. And I took it all. I'm fine. I screwed up, and this is what I'm doing. I'm ready to, pay for it. And the Americans were very angry that they wouldn't be able to put me away forever, which is what they wanted to do. They wanted to, and they couldn't do that. So they put a lot of pressure on the Panamanian government to arrest anybody and everybody, and they arrested my wife. And the Panamanians are just the redheaded stepchild of the United States. They do whatever the United States says. Just pretty much the truth for anywhere in Latin America. I mean, everybody's horrified of the Americans. They remember the bombs that rained down on Panama, 25 years ago. So whatever Uncle Sam says, that's what they do. And Uncle Sam said, break it off in Bill's ass, and that's what they did. And so then there was Cheryl Hughes. Cheryl Hughes was a really stupid, horrible thing that I did. I mean, I really regret this a lot. Cheryl Hughes was the wife of a drug trafficker in Bocas del Toro who was getting a divorce, and he didn't want to have to give her half of his belongings, and so that's why she was killed. And in the end, that's what actually got me into trouble, because after that event took place, after her murder took place, then the family members of Cheryl Hughes came, and the man who actually took the contract, who gave me the contract to kill her, said, well, we think Bill did it. And so I was in Costa Rica on vacation, and I get a phone call saying, and the cops are raiding your house. I'm like, oh shit, what? Why? And so then I was like, well, I'm not, and I worked with the Panamanian police. I didn't work with them. But I had informants in the Panamanian police who I paid to tell me stuff. And so one of my guys from the DJ, which is like the Panamanian version of the FBI, called me and said, hey, you got to stay the fuck out of Panama for a little while till I can fix this, because you got a problem. And so I was cool. I'm like, cool, I'll stay out. So I sat in a cabin beside an active volcano in Costa Rica called Turrialba. So I was there watching television one day, and I saw my face come on the television and said, Wild Bill, in Spanish, obviously. El Salvaje Bill, el más buscado en el mundo. The Wild Bill, the most looked for assassin in the history of Central America. I'm like, oh my God.
Okay, so Bill was on quite the journey of destruction. This is all we have time for in this episode, but we will continue with Bill's journey in the next episode, where he talks about being on the run and his eventual capture. Trust me, It's intense. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new, and check out the links in the description for Bill's Facebook page and the books he's written. Until next time, stay sane.